Welcome. In this session, I'm going to discuss about parasitism, mutualism, and then emensalism. So, with these three types of population interactions, I'm about to complete this chapter, organisms and populations. Right. So, let's begin this session with parasitism. Now, what is the definition of this parasitism? So let's say it is a non-mutual relationship. Actually, in mutual relationship, there is a benefit between the two partners who are involved in that relationship. So mutualism is benefit of both the species who are involved in that type of interaction. But here in case of parasitism, right, at least one species is not benefited. In fact, it is harmed. So it is a non-mutual relationship, okay, between two different species in which one species called parasite is benefited, in which parasite is benefited, and the other species called host is harmed, right? So it is a non-mutual relationship between two different species in which one species called the parasite is benefited and the other species called host is harmed. So that's why here I'll take the parasite is benefited. So that's what I mentioned with the plus symbol, whereas the host is harmed. So I'll take, okay, so in this minus symbol. So say suppose for example a disease called teniasis. So there is a disease called teniasis where the parasite is Taenia solium. So the parasite is a Taenia. Okay, solium is its a complete scientific name, whereas the host is human. Okay, so in this case the host human is harmed, whereas the parasite Taenia solium will get benefit, right? Now, why this parasitism? So why species have evolved to become parasites? Because being a parasite, it need not need to search for the food, okay, and even need not make its own food. It can easily depend on the food that is available from the host, okay. So and also there will be a space comfortably available in the host. So for these purposes, okay, in most taxonomic groups, many species evolved into parasites. Okay, so let's see here the parasite. So what's the benefit of that? The parasite gets free lodging and meals. So the food and the lodging, so that is the space or to live, will be free. That's one benefit to the parasite. Then, and another point is that many parasites are host specific. So what we mean by this, many parasites are host specific. So which means that a particular parasite is able to live only in that particular host. So it is adapted to that host only. So when the host changes, it may not be able to survive, and it need to develop new mechanisms to able to survive in that new host. So in that case, many parasites are host specific. And then the parasite and host show co-evolution. The parasite and the host show co-evolution. What do you mean by this? Here, the parasites will develop new methods, to counteract the action of the host. So the host doesn't like the parasite to be with it. So hence, what happens? The parasite will develop, various types of mechanisms to eliminate the parasite. So the host will develop various types of mechanisms to eliminate the parasite. Okay, but in turn the parasite will also develop mechanisms to counteract that, whatever the defenses developed by the host. Okay, so it means that if the host evolves, develops mechanisms to prevent the parasite also develops, certain kind of mechanisms to uh, act against that host defenses. So in that case, the parasite and host will be showing co-evolution, right? And then parasites show different adaptations. Okay, so they show, say, many adaptations. To be a parasite, it has to show those adaptations. So without that, it will be difficult for to live as the parasite. So what are that adaptations? Say suppose here one, the loss of unnecessary sensory organs. So the parasites who live inside the body, okay, or most of the parasites who live inside the body of a host, they need not require any sense organs like eyes, the sense of taste and hearing. All this is not required. So hence they will be losing all those sensory organs. So the loss of unnecessary means not required or unwanted sensory organs are all eliminated. Then they also show presence of adhesive organs. They have presence of adhesive organs, right? And of course these adhesive organs and also suckers, right, etc., help parasite to cling to the host, okay, like we see in case of leech. So leech is external parasite. So in this case of leech, it has the suckers which help it to attach it to the host, and after that it will be able to suck the blood from the host. So presence of adhesive organ suckers will help the parasite to cling to the host. That's an adaptation here. And in some cases of parasites, okay, so in some they lost digestive system. So they lost digestive system completely. So say I will take the example of the tinea solium again here. So example, the tinea solium. So in this species, what happened? There is a complete loss of the digestive system. So why is so? Because this parasite lives inside the small intestine of human being. So it lives in the small intestine of the human being, and we know in the small intestine almost the process of digestion is completed and food is already digested, and this digested food, it need not again digest inside the parasite's body. So hence what it does is it directly absorbs that digested food through its general body surface. So in course of time, what happened is as it is not using its digestive system, and so it all became extinct. So it has completely lost that digestive system. Okay, so that's in some parasites there is a loss of that digestive system here. And then the parasites also have high reproductive capability. So parasites have high reproductive capability, right? So here these parasites are able to produce their offspring, okay, not one or two, so they will be producing thousands. In fact, in some cases they may even go into millions of offsprings. So because the host will always, as I told you, try to eliminate these parasites. Now the point is that if they are producing the offspring in very small number, then definitely that number if dies, then the continuation of the species, that is parasitic species, okay, will become extinct. So they will become extinct. Now to prevent this, so they produce the offspring in large numbers. So when they produce the offspring in large numbers, so if at least many of them die also, few of them will be able to survive and continue, okay, their species. So that's why the parasites will be having very high reproductive capabilities. And next, the life cycles of parasites. The life cycles of parasites are complex. So the life cycles of the parasites are complex, and they require one or two intermediate hosts. They require one or two intermediate hosts. So these intermediate hosts are usually the vectors, okay, who will be carrying that parasite from one host to another host. For example, if we take malaria disease, so in the malaria disease, okay, so there are actually two hosts we can take. One is a human and another one is the female Anopheles mosquito. And this female Anopheles mosquito is going to carry the disease from, okay, human being, from one human being to another human being, acting as a vector. So it's a vector, okay, female Anopheles mosquito is a vector. Now in that disease, the humans, the life cycle of the parasite in humans is actually of asexual. So the parasite undergoes asexual reproductive cycle in case of human being, right? And the sexual phase of the parasite will take place in case of that Anopheles mosquito, right? So you can see that the life cycle is being divided, and it is complex and requires this, okay, host, intermediate host. So the parasites will be having the complex life cycles, and they require one or two intermediate hosts in the case, right? So that's what one more example I would like to give here. So the human liver fluke. So let's see, for this the human liver fluke. So this is a parasite, and this parasite, to complete its life cycle, it requires two hosts, okay. So in the life cycle of this liver fluke, one host, okay, so host 1 is snail, and then host 2 is a fish. So it requires a fish and a snail to complete its life cycle here, okay. And even I already given you the malarial example. So it requires there, okay, two hosts. One is mosquito and one is a human being here, right? So that's some adaptations of parasites to survive in hosts. Now when we see the parasites, I will classify these parasites mainly into two types, called ectoparasites and another one called the endoparasites. Ectoparasites and endoparasites. So when we see these ecto and endoparasites, these ecto means outside. So these are the parasites, okay, that feed on the host from the external surface. So parasites that depend on host from external surface means from the body of the host on the external surface of the host. Okay, so parasites that depend on host from external surface, so they are called the ectoparasites, like we see in case of the lice. Okay, so the lice on human beings, so these are on human beings, you can see, okay, in case of human beings, right? And even in case of ticks on dogs. So ticks on dogs, I think you might have seen the lice in case of human beings, ticks on, okay, dogs. And then we will also see some ectoparasite copepods. So these copepods on marine fishes. So copepods are actually arthropods. They are ectoparasites. Okay, and these are seen on the marine fishes. So lice on human beings, ticks on dogs, and copepods on marine fishes are some examples here. Okay, and not only in case of animals we see the parasites, even in case of plants. So in plants we see an example called, okay, cuscuta. So this is a parasitic plant. So cuscuta is a parasitic plant, and this plant has lost its chlorophyll, and even leaves and everything, and completely it depends on its host for its nutrient purposes. Okay, so lost its chlorophyll, okay, leaves, all of them, and completely depends on the host. Completely depends on host. Of course, this is not seen inside, it will be seen growing on the host plant. Okay, and derives all the nutrients from that host plant. So this is how we see in case of these ecto parasites here. Now coming to the endoparasites, the endoparasites means these are the parasites that live inside the host. So they are going to live inside the host. Okay, and of course ectoparasites, they will live outside the host, on the surface of the host. They will be attached, okay, and cling to the host. Now in case of these endoparasites, I will take the same example of the malaria. So you can see in that case of malarial disease, or say, sorry, plasmodium is the parasite that causes this malaria. So this plasmodium, so it lives in, okay, liver cells. It lives in liver cells. It lives in RBCs in case of human beings. So it will complete its life cycle, okay, using both the cells, liver cells and RBCs. I hope you might have studied, okay, in human health and diseases, okay, how this plasmodium will be completing its life cycle in the liver cells and RBCs. Both will be of asexual mode of reproduction that takes place in case of human beings, right? And coming to the life cycles between the ecto and endoparasites, okay, the ectoparasites need not have a very complex life cycles, but endoparasites, okay, these have very complex life cycles. So they have very complex life cycles. Okay, and in these endoparasites, what happened is their morphological and anatomical features became simplified. So they became so simple, so need not have so many morphological that's what we say, the sensory organs presence, all those things, they are lost or they got simplified. Okay, so that morphological and anatomical features, they all became simplified. But okay, the reproductive capacity became very high. So the reproductive capacity became very high, so they are able to reproduce very much higher when compared with even the endoparasites. So that's two different types of parasites: ectoparasites and endoparasites. Now we have another concept called brood parasitism. So another concept called brood parasitism. So what we mean by this brood parasitism? So this brood parasitism is actually a type of parasitism in which we see that the parasitic bird, so say a parasitic bird lays eggs in the nest of host bird. So a parasitic bird lays eggs in the nest of the host bird. Okay, and the parasitic bird doesn't like to incubate the eggs or take care of that young one after the incubation. So usually birds, okay, they build the nest. Okay, they build the nest, and then after building the nest, they lay the eggs and they incubate the eggs. So after the incubation, the eggs hatch into young ones, and once the young ones emerge from the eggs, they are going to be fed by the mother, or the father and mother, both of them. In some cases, in some species of birds, both the male and female will be able to feed their young ones. Okay, so this all the things, certain birds have stopped doing this and they became parasites. So that condition is called brood parasitism. So instead of building the nest, okay, and then incubating the eggs and then feeding the young ones, so to stop all this, they simply, okay, lay eggs in some other species, okay, nest. So here the example in this case is the relation between cuckoo, so it's called quail bird, and crow. So here this cuckoo is the parasite, so it shows that brood parasitism. Okay, so it doesn't like to build the nest and incubate the eggs and feed the young ones. So what it does is, okay, it's going to lay those eggs in the nest of crow. So of course the point is that you may be asking that whether the crow doesn't know that whether it is of its own eggs or someone else. Yes, the crow is capable of identifying its own eggs or not. So for this reason, what happened is, the cuckoo, what it has done in course of time, it started to lay eggs that resemble just like the crow eggs. Okay, so here the eggs of cuckoo resemble the crow's eggs, right? Of course, if this crow is going to produce a new variety, or there is some changes, okay, in the morphology of the eggs, then the cuckoo also will try to, what you say, develop the eggs that will resemble that crow. So that's what I said, the parasite and the host like to co-evolve. Okay, so if this evolves, then along with that the parasite also tries to evolve. Okay, of course, in fact, in many cases they have to evolve for their survival. So eggs of the cuckoo resemble the crow's eggs, and this will reduce the chance of detecting by the crow. Okay, and now what happens when the crow is out? Okay, the cuckoo will find such nest, and then it will actually push away the eggs from the nest. Okay, the crow's nest. So what it does, the cuckoo, it will push away the crow's, crow's eggs will be pushed out of the crow's nest, and then in that place it's going to lay its own eggs, and the crow will not be able to detect, because the eggs of the cuckoo will be just like the crow's eggs, and thinking that the crow as its own eggs, it is going to incubate the quail's eggs. Okay, and even after that, what I say, the cuckoo is hatched, so the crow will not be able to find out the difference, and it will be feeding the young one, and they're very quick to grow, and within a short period of time, okay, so they emerge as young ones and fly away from that nest. So that's what how in case of this brood parasitism, uh, right? So with that, so that's all about the parasitism. Next one, we will see about mutualism, right? So first, we'll see the mutualism definition. So it is an interaction between two different species. It is an interaction between two different species, okay, in which both species, get benefited, so if I take species A, this will have, okay, a positive interaction, and species B will also have the same. So both of them are going to get benefit, right? Now let's see some examples of this, like lichens. So we know that lichens is a symbiotic association between the alga and fungus. So this is a symbiotic association. So close association that two species which are involved, if they are separated, they cannot live independently. So that species, the symbiotic association between, okay, alga and a fungus, right? And we know that this algal component, so we call it phycobiont, whereas this fungus is a mycobiont, right? And this phycobiont has the ability to perform photosynthesis, so it performs photosynthesis, whereas microbiome does not, okay, perform, because it's a fungus, it doesn't have that ability to perform photosynthesis, but what it does is it's going to supply the nutrients to the phycobiome. Okay, so this phycobiome is going to supply nutrients necessary for photosynthesis to alga, and the alga takes up that nutrients and synthesizes the food materials, and okay, the part of that synthesized food, okay, some part of the food is given to the fungus. Okay, so this is one symbiotic association in which you can see that the alga is benefited from the fungus, and the fungus also is benefited from the algal. Okay, then and another one called the mycorrhizae. And another example is about the mycorrhizae. So this mycorrhizae is, we know that it's an again a symbiotic association, but this symbiotic association is between roots of higher plants, between roots of higher plants and between roots of higher plants and fungus, between roots of higher plants and fungus. So that's what we call it, the condition, the mycorrhizae here. Now the same thing here also, the fungus is going to help the plant to absorb all that nutrients, just like how we have seen in this case, all the nutrients, and it will supply it to the plant, and the plant performs the photosynthesis, and whatever the food it synthesized, so some of that will be passed on to the fungus that is seen associated with its roots. Okay, so in this case, so both these the plants and the fungus are going to get benefited. So that is also a mutualistic association. Of course, if you remove that fungus or don't allow the fungus, so it's not going to live. So the association is so strong that that plant cannot live without the fungus, and fungus also cannot live with the help of the without that plant, right? Now, so these are some examples we have seen in case of mutualism. So then we'll see another example where the mutualism lies between plants and animals. Okay, so another example is the relationship or association between plants and animals. Plants and animals. So we see here many animals actually help in pollinating flowers. They help in pollination of flowers, and in turn the plants will get the food in the form of fruits or pollen. Okay, so that's what the plants will be rewarding the animals in giving what I say, the fruits and pollen are given as a reward for pollination. So in this case, the plants get benefit from the animals for the purpose of pollination, so hence is a positive, and animals get food from the plants and that they get benefit. So in this case, both are benefited, and without the animals, the pollination, many plants have adopted to this pollination by animals, and if they are absent, then the pollination will not take place and the plants can become extinct. At the same time, if they don't get food, the animals can also become extinct. So that's what I say, both the relationships between the plants and animals is so close that we cannot separate them, and they need to depend one another, and that interaction we call it mutualism. Now, under this the association between plants and animals, we will see two examples for this. So example A. So here, that relationship between fig tree and wasp. Relationship between fig tree and wasp. So between these two, here the fig tree is the plant species and the wasp is animal. So the relationship that lies between these two is again a mutualistic relationship here, and here that's what we see. There is a one-to-one relationship, a tight one-to-one relationship. Only the wasps of a particular species are able to pollinate this fig tree, and the fig tree has adapted, okay, for that pollination by wasp only. If the wasp is it becomes extinct, then the fig tree in course of time also is going to become extinct. Okay, so now this wasp is going to use this the fig tree, so especially the flowers, when they are young, they are going to lay eggs. So the wasp, okay, lays eggs. So this is called, okay, oviposition. So we call it oviposition. It's called oviposition. So lays eggs. Okay. So here, when we see the fig, so it produces, in the case of fig tree, it produces flowers inside a structure. So where you will see the female flowers, okay, in the front, and here you will I'm sorry, these are male flowers in the front, and female flowers at the back. So female flowers at the back. Okay, so we will be seeing inside a structure, right, with a hole, and inside that you will find both male and female flowers, and both these male and female flowers are not going to come to maturation at the same time. So they don't come to the maturation. So first female flowers will mature. So first mature they, okay, later the male flowers are going to mature. So now what happens is this female wasp will use this, okay, to lay eggs inside. Okay, now, so actually when it has come from outside, okay, it has brought actually pollen with it, right, and that pollen has been deposited here on the female flowers. Okay, and then what it does, it has laid eggs here. It has laid eggs. Now by the time these female flowers, okay, so where their ovules become seeds, okay, those some of that seeds will be used by the wasp eggs. Okay, some of the seeds are used by developing wasps. Used by the developing wasps inside. So here these are female flowers. So this wasp actually brought the pollen, okay, while it has in search of this place to lay the eggs. So it might have visited some other, okay, fig trees, and then during that time it might have collected that pollen, and that pollen it brings up, and then okay, it will be depositing on these female flowers, and it also lays eggs here. So these are the eggs of wasps. So these wasps, by the time they become caterpillars, or they start developing and they hatch out of the eggs, so here these flowers will start already forming into, of course, the ovules of them will develop into seeds, and some of that seeds will be used by these developing wasps as their food. Okay, that is a reward by the fig tree, okay, for the pollinating these flowers, right. Now after that, after using these seeds, they become adults. So these eggs of wasp, they develop, and then later they become adults. Okay, now these adults, what happens is, by the time the eggs develop into the adults, the male flowers mature. So now the male flowers will be having the pollen. Now these female, what I say, the adults wasps, while they're going out, they carry this pollen with them. So this is the pollen. So they will be carrying this pollen with them, and they will be searching for some other, okay, fig flowers to lay their eggs. So this is how we see the relationship between the fig tree and the wasp. Okay, so what are that the larvae that develop from these wasp eggs. Okay, so they are going to use these seeds and then later develop into adults, and by the time these become adults, the male flowers will mature and they're ready with the pollen. And when the when these adults are moving out, okay, the pollen will be carried by those adult wasps to some other flowers. So this is how we see the relationship between the fig tree and wasps. Okay, then we see another relationship between orchid and bee. So the association between orchid and bee. Okay, but point is that in this case there is a slight difference. Not all plants are going to reward. In this case, the orchid is not going to reward at all to bee. So whereas the bee will be pollinating. So it pollinates. Okay, so it pollinates these orchid flowers, whereas the orchid doesn't reward bee. So what it does is, how it happens, so the petals of this orchid flower, so one of the petal, when we see here, the one of the petal will be different and it just looks like the female bee. So this petal modified to look like female bee, okay, and the male bee, thinking that this is the female bee, it tries to come and copulate with this petal. So that is a condition called the copulation. Pseudo copulation. So it tries to copulate. So here, which is not a true copulation, because this is not the real female bee, but in fact it is a petal that is modified to look like a female bee. And the bee, when tries to come and tries to, what I say, uh, mate with this, okay, during this time what it does is the orchid will put the pollen on this male bee. So this is the male bee, and the male bee is deposited with pollen. The male bee is deposited with the pollen. So the petal modified to look like the female bee, okay, and the male bee will try to come and copulate with this petal, and in this time the male bee will be pollinated by the pollen. Will be pollinated by the of course deposited with the pollen. And this male bee, after trying some time, it comes to know that okay, it is of no use. Then it tries to visit another flower. During this time, the male bee will carry that pollen from one flower to another flower. Okay, so in this way the orchid plants actually show, of course, something called a sexual decide. So they are going to show, okay, a phenomenon called sexual decide. Okay, and this species of the orchid is called Ophrys. So it's a Ophrys species. So that shows this sexual decide. So just by making one of the petal get modified to look like the female bee. Okay, so in this case, the point is that the orchid is not rewarding the bee, right? It is just using it to pollinate, okay, their flowers. So that's the association between orchid and bee. So that's all about the mutualism. And the last one of this is Emensalism, the population interactions. Among the population interactions, the last one is Emensalism. So let's see the definition of this Emensalism. So this is an interaction between two different species in which one species is neither benefited nor harmed. In which one species is neither benefited nor harmed, but other species is harmed. Other species is harmed. Okay, so let's see an example in this case. Say suppose, okay, some species of this fungi, okay, they are going to produce antibiotics. So fungi produce antibiotics, okay. So which we say that it's a byproduct of that metabolic activities in the case of fungi. And now these antibiotics have ability to kill bacteria, ability to kill the bacteria. Say suppose you have in a small, okay, petri dish the fungi growing here, and then if this fungi is growing here, it will not allow, okay, the bacteria to grow. Of course, the point is that it will be releasing some chemicals that's called antibiotics. And so this is a fungus colony, and you can see here the bacteria. So these bacteria will be killed due to the action of antibiotics. In this case, killing them is of no benefit or harm to this fungi. So in this case, the fungi is neither benefited nor harmed. So in this case, I need to take it as 0, okay, whereas the bacteria is harmed, right. So that's an example for this Emensalism. Okay, so with this we complete the chapter organisms and populations. Okay, and I wish all the best for your preparatory examination that start from January 4th, right. So right, all the best.